70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens was just one of several human species scattered across the planet. In East Africa, we were small bands of foragers, vulnerable to predators and dependent on cooperation to survive. Neanderthals roamed Europe and Western Asia, Denisovans lived in parts of Asia, and other now extinct humans occupied scattered corners of the world. We were not stronger than them, not faster, not better adapted to our environments. What set us apart was something invisible, our ability to think and communicate in entirely new ways. This shift, known as the cognitive revolution, marked a turning point in our history. We developed language with a complexity no other creature possessed, not just the ability to signal danger or describe an object, but to discuss abstract concepts, possibilities, and things that didn't exist at all. For the first time, humans could share stories, myths, and imagined realities. This was not a small improvement, it was the foundation of everything to come. The real power of shared fiction was its ability to unite strangers. A chimpanzee community collapses once it grows beyond the size where every individual knows each other personally. Sapiens overcame that limit by binding large groups through common beliefs. 100, 1,000, even millions of people could cooperate because they shared a story, whether it was about spirits, ancestors, totems, or later, nations and laws. These imagined orders allowed us to hunt in larger groups, coordinate more effectively, and pass down knowledge across generations. As we spread out of Africa around 60,000 years ago, this ability gave us the edge over other humans. In every region we entered, the native human species disappeared. Some we may have absorbed through interbreeding, but most were likely outcompeted or displaced. By 10,000 years ago, Homo sapiens stood alone. We had begun as just another animal, but our minds had opened a path toward becoming the rulers of the planet and the builders of worlds that existed first in imagination, then in reality. For almost the entire history of our species, humans lived as nomadic foragers, moving with the seasons, following the migrations of animals, and gathering wild plants. Life was unpredictable, but it offered a variety of foods, physical activity, and the flexibility to leave when resources ran out. Then, about 12,000 years ago, in several parts of the world, humans began to shift toward a new way of life, farming. Harari calls this the agricultural revolution, and while it may sound like an obvious step forward, it was far more complicated than it first appears. The change didn't happen overnight. For centuries, people cultivated small plots while still hunting and gathering. But as they realized that planting seeds could yield reliable harvests, they began to settle permanently. Wheat in the Middle East, rice in China, maize in the Americas, these crops became the backbone of human diets. At first glance, it seemed like a triumph. More food meant more people could be fed. But there was a hidden cost. Agriculture locked humans into a much harder lifestyle. Farmers worked longer hours than foragers, faced the constant risk of crop failure, and relied on a limited diet that often lacked the nutrients of their old foraging menu. Diseases spread more easily in crowded settlements. Surplus food didn't mean better lives for everyone, it meant population growth. The extra grain fed more children, who grew into more laborious, who produced more grain, which supported even more people. Over time, this cycle entrenched people in an endless struggle to produce enough just to survive. Yet farming also created the conditions for civilization. Permanent settlements allowed for the accumulation of possessions, the development of specialized roles, and the emergence of social hierarchies. Some individuals controlled land and grain storage, gaining power over others. Written records, first developed to track harvests and taxes, emerged. Religion and culture adapted, too, often reinforcing the idea that the agricultural order was natural or divinely ordained. Farming wasn't just a new way to get food, it reshaped human society, economy, and even our relationship with nature. By binding humans to the land, the agricultural revolution set us on an irreversible path. It brought us stability, but also inequality, overwork, and vulnerability to famine. It laid the groundwork for kingdoms, empires, and all the complexities of organized civilization. We had tamed plants and animals, but in a sense, they had also tamed us. As agriculture spread and populations grew, isolated farming villages evolved into towns, cities, and eventually vast civilizations. With larger numbers came the challenge of managing strangers, people who did not know each other personally but still had to cooperate. The key to this new scale of human society lay in what Harari calls imagined orders, shared systems of belief that existed only in our collective minds but held immense real-world power. The earliest of these were religious and mythological frameworks. They explained the world, established moral codes, and justified social hierarchies. Belief in the same gods or ancestral spirits allowed people separated by distance or culture to feel connected as part of the same community. These religious systems were flexible. They could unite hundreds of small tribes under one symbolic order, allowing for massive cooperation without direct personal ties. Trade was another unifying force. As cities grew, they became hubs in networks that stretched across continents. Traders needed a common language of exchange, and so money, another imagined order, emerged. Gold, silver, and later coins and paper held no intrinsic value beyond what everyone agreed they had. Yet because of that shared belief, money became the most universal and efficient system of trust ever invented, able to connect strangers from opposite ends of the earth in mutually beneficial exchange. Empires, too, played a central role in unifying humankind. From the Roman Empire to the Han Dynasty to the Islamic Caliphates, empires spread laws, infrastructure, languages, and cultural norms across vast territories. They often absorbed and blended the traditions of conquered peoples, creating shared identities over time. While empires could be brutal in conquest, they also fostered stability, trade, and cultural exchange on an unprecedented scale. Over the centuries, religion, trade, and empire wove humanity into ever larger networks of connection. By the early modern period, the world was no longer a patchwork of isolated cultures but a web of intertwined societies. What began as small groups of foragers bound by stories had transformed into vast civilizations bound by law, faith, commerce, and political authority. Humankind was moving toward becoming, in Harari's words, a single global culture, though one still full of conflict and contradiction. For most of human history, knowledge was based on tradition, myth, and the authority of elders, priests, or rulers. People did not question whether their beliefs about the world were correct, they accepted them as given truths. But around 500 years ago, something remarkable happened. Humans began to systematically doubt what they knew and to seek answers through observation, experimentation, and mathematics. This shift, known as the scientific revolution, unleashed a wave of discovery that would transform the world. The breakthrough was not just new inventions, it was a new way of thinking. Scholars began to admit their ignorance and to see it as a starting point rather than a weakness. Instead of asking, "What do the sacred texts say?" they asked, "What does the evidence show?" This approach led to rapid advances in astronomy, physics, biology, and medicine. Copernicus proposed that the Earth revolved around the Sun, Galileo used telescopes to confirm it, Newton explained gravity with universal laws, and countless others pushed the boundaries of knowledge. Exploration went hand in hand with science. European nations funded voyages not only to find trade routes but also to map the world, collect data, and claim territory. Science and empire fed each other. Technological advances in navigation and weaponry enabled conquests, and those conquests brought back resources and information to fuel more research. The printing press spread ideas at unprecedented speed, turning local breakthroughs into global revolutions in thought. The scientific revolution also reshaped economies. The rise of capitalism dovetailed with scientific progress, as investors funded risky ventures in the hope of profit, whether those ventures were trading companies, colonies, or research projects. Banks, stock exchanges, and insurance systems supported this expanding web of exploration, invention, and commerce. Science was no longer the isolated pursuit of a few philosophers, it became a central driver of wealth and power. By the 19th and 20th centuries, the pace of change had accelerated to levels unimaginable in earlier eras. Industrial machines, vaccines, electricity, and eventually computers and nuclear power redefined human life. For the first time, humanity had the capacity not only to understand the forces of nature but to reshape them entirely, and even to threaten the survival of the planet itself. The scientific revolution had set us on a path of ever-growing mastery, but also ever-growing responsibility. Today, Homo sapiens stands at a unique point in history. For the first time, we are not simply adapting to our environment, we are redesigning it. Advances in science and technology have given us tools that previous generations could never have imagined. We can manipulate genes, create artificial intelligence, and alter the climate itself. The question Harari poses is no longer just what will humans do, but what will humans become? One possible path is biological engineering. With breakthroughs in genetics, we can already edit DNA to prevent disease, enhance physical traits, or perhaps even influence intelligence and personality. Such capabilities raise profound ethical questions. If we can design our children, will we create a new kind of inequality, where the rich literally engineer themselves into a different species? And if we begin altering our own biology, will the results still be recognizably human? Another frontier is the merging of humans and technology. Brain-computer interfaces, advanced prosthetics, and neural implants could blur the line between organic and artificial. We may enhance our senses, expand memory, or connect directly to networks of information. Over time, this could lead to beings that are part human, part machine, a step toward what some call Homo Deus, or God-man, with powers once attributed only to deities. Artificial intelligence represents a different kind of transformation. We are building machines that can learn, reason, and make decisions, potentially faster and more effectively than we can. If AI surpasses human intelligence, it could reshape the economy, politics, and even our sense of purpose. Will we control it, or will it guide its own destiny? And in such a world, what role will humans play? Harari's warning is that our power has grown far faster than our wisdom. In the past, we shaped myths to unite us, built empires to organize us, and developed science to understand the world. Now, our inventions could redefine life itself, but we have no guarantee they will serve our best interests. The future could be a paradise of abundance and possibility, or a dangerous experiment we cannot undo. What is certain is that the story of Homo sapiens is far from over. We are no longer just the animal that imagined gods, we are becoming something closer to gods ourselves. Whether that transformation leads to greatness or ruin will depend on the choices we make in the decades ahead. And for the first time, the fate of all life on Earth rests, quite literally, in human hands.